It's Monday. I'm back. I was not here for a week or two. Well, I was here, but I was tired because I got married. That's a thing I did. And apparently that takes a lot of time, bandwidth, and focus. So, not the marriage itself, but the marriage will take time, bandwidth, and focus. But actually getting to that took a while and a lot of that. But I've got a couple gigs coming up this weekend. I got one DJ gig and one live sound gig on the same night, which is going to be nerve wracking because I have to leave somebody at one of them alone, and that is not something that I like doing because I am a control freak. But it got me thinking about a few things. So let's look at some of said things. Right. I often hear the expression "be nice to your sound guy," and it's a good expression, I guess, or like a good sentiment. But I think people are doing it wrong. When it comes to being nice to your sound guy, it's not just, oh, I'm gonna go buy him a beer, or like I'm gonna be polite, right? You should be polite. I don't recommend buying your sound guy a beer. I know some sound guys might disagree with that sentiment, but if every band buys the sound guy a beer, that can become a problem. But yeah, it depends on the venue. Depends on like if you just have one sound guy and you're the only band. Yeah, sure, buy him a beer. Why not? But just proceed with caution. Anyway, let's start with DJs because DJs are notorious for redlining. Now, DJing is different than live sound. Who knew? But especially when you're dealing with a sound technician or a front of house anything, uh, this doesn't sound good. So, redlining, there's like a terrible expression in the DJ world of if you ain't redlining, you ain't headlining or something like that. It's bad. Now, if you're dealing with analog old school mixers that have, a crap ton of weight in them because they got these big transformers and stuff on every channel, those can sound kind of good if you overdrive them a little bit. Maybe. You got to test that theory, right? Plug your mixer into a recording interface, slam the output or input. I'm not actually exactly sure the VU meter on this. That'd be pre or post. Anyway, hit that red line, see how it sounds, and then pull it down, see how it sounds with them normalized, right? Your ear is going to automatically assume most of the time that something that's a little bit louder than something else sounds better just because of the way we perceive sound. That is why, as much as I hate saying don't trust your ears when it comes to audio, sometimes you shouldn't trust your ears. There are situations where it is going to be better to trust a meter, right? Trust your eyes. I love metering. Ever since I started using a UI16, I have a really hard time going back to my other mixers. I've got a Yamaha and a Samson, and now I've got a CAD. Actually, I'm gonna show that one at some point. Let me look it up here because I got a new mixer and I'm debating if I'm gonna keep it or if I'm gonna sell it because I can put it up for sale in the store because it's brand spanking new. But I originally kind of bought it for myself, and we'll get into why momentarily. But carrying on, what's happening here, these red lines, they mean one of two things. Either you are clipping, which creates distortion, and that's where an older analog DJ mixer might sound good because clipping means distortion. Essentially, you've put the signal high enough. Let me bring up a picture of a sound wave clipping. Pop this in here. Yeah, so essentially, this line here, this is as loud as your device, whether it be a particular spot in the device, right? Sometimes, for example, guitarists will have they're creating distortion on purpose, and you can create it in two sections. You can either have it, well, technically it can happen in more than two places. But usually it's on the front end or the back end, right? It's on your preamp or your power amp. And either way, some element of the circuit can't handle the power that you're slamming into it, right? The signal's too much. So it hits this, and instead of making more volume, it usually creates distortion. And if that distortion sounds good, it sounds good, right? This is where you can trust your ears. If the distortion coming out of a mixer sounds good, you might be able to get away with it. But most modern mixers are not equipped to sound good when they clip, especially because we're dealing with digital signals. And if you distort anywhere in the digital realm, it's going to sound horrendous, right? I'm not talking about simulators and stuff that are purposely making distortion that sounds analog. I'm talking if you overdrive a signal, if you clip in your DAW, if you clip in your depends on the input. Sometimes clipping a preamp but not clipping it in the digital realm could sound good. It depends on the preamp. But anyway, this is going to sound bad, especially in the digital realm. It might sound okay if you've got like transformers or tubes. Oftentimes, those older circuits, you're not going to see those in very many DJ rigs, but they will round off the sound, and it creates distortion, which can sometimes sound good to the ear. A modern DJ mixer won't do that because they're not made with those type of components. They are made to be clean ass. So don't redline it. The distortion that you're creating is not pleasant to the ear more often than not. And again, plug it into something, record it, hear it with and without, but with it volume parodied, right? If one's louder than the other, you might in your head think, oh, well, I mean, yeah, I can hear a little bit of that nasty distortion, but it sounds better for some reason. It's because it's louder. It's just the case. You don't want it. You don't. So if you are a DJ, yellow is fine-ish. I did mention that sometimes this red means something else. Sometimes that means a limiter. I have a limiter running on my voice right now. I'm not touching it because I'm seeing myself at about -5 on my metering. But a brick wall limiter essentially means as your volume comes up, instead of moving into clipping, it's just compressing the crap out of it. This also sounds bad. I'm sorry. No, it doesn't have a cool effect to be hitting your limiter. People like dynamic range. You may not think they do, but people like hearing stuff that goes from quiet to loud. And if you slam that limiter, basically what you're doing as you're turning your volume up, you have a maximum that you cannot surpass. That's how the brick wall limiters work. And now your minimum volume keeps going up. And now you only have like this much room or potentially no room where everything is the same volume. It just makes you sound bland and doesn't sound good. It just doesn't. Don't do it. So, DJs, you're out of the way. Cool. How to be nice to your sound tech. Now, this is what they call a stage plot. This is a good little resource here, DIY musician, and basically they're saying like you can create a diagram, or you should create a diagram of the stage. And I like this especially. This is just a side note. If you're using modern neodymium microphones that have a hypercardioid pattern, they do pick up from the rear. So having this intentionally off axis for each of these mics is actually really good. But this here, you wouldn't want to do this if you're using a neodymium microphone. A standard like SM58 style using a ceramic magnet, I believe. I don't know the math and the physics of why, but every time I look into like a Beta 58 is hypercardioid, and the only difference I can tell or I can see from the spec sheets is that they're using a different magnet. So I think there's something about neodymium and its weight that makes it because they are lighter. That's why they are more sensitive. But I digress. So this is a fairly standard stage plot. Now, I don't use this many monitors, even for a band this size, unless they pay me extra, because this is a lot. I have had people ask for this, and then when I send them the bill, because I add money per speaker I have to haul, they usually end up reducing down to 4 monitors. My usual setup is 3 monitors across the front, one specifically for the vocalist, and then one for each side of the stage, and one wedge monitor for the band. These side fills can be good, especially if you are keeping the amps really low. Being able to have those kick drum mic coming through these can be really nice, etc. But let's assume we're working with something along this line, along these lines, ditching these 2 monitors here, because especially for mobile stuff, we're just not. I don't bring this many speakers to a mobile gig. If I was set up for a house gig where it's like, yeah, you set up the stage, you leave it there, I might do something a little more intricate like this. But oh boy, this might start popping some breakers too. They do have on here, they mentioned even these circuits. So oftentimes with the stage plot, you want to get your stage dimensions, and then you want these. That sound tech stuff, though. What about you as the band? How do you be nice to your sound guy? Number one, if you can send them an email ahead of time saying, hey, here's how many band members we have. Here are our orientation, right? Like we're going to have 2 guitar players on one side here that are both singing background vocals. We got the lead singer at the front. We have a lap steel guy, right? I guess technically this would probably be your, from this angle, I'm assuming this is the bass player. But yeah, you if you really want to be nice to your sound guy, you can let them know the stuff ahead of time, and you can let them know your positioning so that they can set the monitors. If you cannot do that, and you look at the stage and you see they have 3 monitors across the front, and there's say 3 of you plus your drummer, just position yourself based on where the monitors are. Make their life easier. Follow along, children. Get on the bus, right? If the band before you has 2 guitar amps and a bass amp, and you normally have 2 guitars and a bass amp, but we usually have our bass amp over here. You can ask him, but honestly, is it really going to affect things that much to have your bass player like? And although I would have your bass player here. This is fun facts with Dan. After talking to people who like know way more than I do about this kind of stuff, aka people who have a doctorate in studying music. The best piece of advice I was given by somebody who has their master's degree in composition as a percussionist. Now I think he's working towards his doctorate. You want your bass player beside the hi-hat. It helps your bass player lock in, and because they're the kind of the bridge of the band from your drummer to the rest of you, this is a good thing. Having the bass player just to the side of the drummer is exactly where you want him. So if you're a band, start following that concept. Okay, so that'd be my first big tip of being nice to your sound guy is follow the regular stage layout that they already have kind of set up. If you've got something weird and wonky, right, you have like this, they've got a lap steel guy, like things like that might change things. But if you're a standard like trio or quartet, you've got, your lead singer playing guitar, you have a bass player, guitar player, and drummer, right? So chances are what would normally happen is instead of having this guitar player over here, you'd have a guitar player over here, right? Lay yourself out the way that the sound tech already has it set up, but try to, like I said, ideally your sound tech knows this as well, of keeping your bass player on the side of the hi-hat. I digress. Now, other things, as I mentioned, if the Soundtech has the microphones positioned, follow where the microphones are, right? Just because you like to be, say, here instead of here, doesn't mean that's a good idea. They have this thing sound checked to be rejecting frequencies for feedback purposes from this, right? They've EQ'd this microphone a bit ahead of time, hopefully. Well, not the microphone, sorry, the monitor. Shifting the angle and stuff of this can start screwing with that. Now, height, do it. You're right. Now, be careful. When it comes to pro tip, Soundtechs don't destroy their microphone stands. Musicians do. I've had multiple microphones and mic stands get ruined by musicians. I deal with a lot of kids, so that is a little bit of a factor. But I have had people wear out. Let me find this here. Oh, microphone stand. Images. I want one I can zoom in on. Good enough. We'll use this Amazon link. So if you go to adjust your microphone, there are 2 spots to adjust. Sometimes there's the third in terms of boom height. I don't recommend doing that. I guess there's technically a third spot. So the third spot would be there for boom length. There we go. But we've got this dial here. Don't just grab the mic and pull it up to height. This is friction. This is held in place because these sides squeeze in against this rubber thing in the middle. If you're just constantly pulling it up and down, right? Now, this particular mic stand, I don't know if I could actually recommend this. If you see this stuff in the background, this is Canadian pricing. This plastic bit here, I'm not a fan of these being plastic. I much prefer metal. They just tend to last longer. But it is squeezing against a rubber gasket, essentially, in between. And if you just torque it up and down, you're going to wear out this section fast. Don't do that. This is the second most common spot on my mic stands that has been destroyed, and it's because people are just grabbing it and reefing it up, right? This stand I have in front of me is designed to do that. These mic stands aren't. This is the most commonly broken part of any microphone, right? From 2 factors. People just reefing it up and down without relaxing the collar here, or people over tightening it, and then it just becomes stripped, or it's a lot of problems. So make sure if you're going to raise or lower your microphone, raise or lower it here, tighten it enough that it stops moving, but don't reef it into the ground. My ideal, my new favorite microphone stands. They're a little more expensive. I want the one with quick release. Quick. Hey, there it is. These are my new favorite microphone stand. This here, there's 2 things I like about it. One is this adjuster here. I wish I could zoom. It says roll over to zoom in, but it's not working. Thanks, Red One. This piece here tightens and loosens both the pitch and the length of the boom, which is great. And this is a like a latched quick release. So you squeeze it and you pull it up, you let go, and it stays there. Instantly solves my problems. I sell these to a lot of schools because kids are notorious for being hard on anything, as I mentioned earlier. And these just work really well. So if you go to adjust your mic stand, adjust it properly. Your sound tech will like you for it. But I wouldn't recommend changing its positioning without asking them first, because you do run the risk of just if the mic has changed angles, the direction of its pickup is now moved. So feedback and whatnot changes, different bleed angles and stuff start changing, etc. So it can be a bad idea. Carrying on, other things. Drummers, hit your drums while you're sound checking. There's nothing more annoying than, okay, give me a bit of a kick, and then people start playing. It's just the worst. Same thing, your snare, right? 9 times out of 10, the two things they're going to be adjusting the most are going to be the kick and the snare. Make sure you're hitting them as hard as you normally would, and then be listening. The best thing for the rest of the band is shut up. This is a perfect opportunity to tune, but don't be playing your guitar or jamming around on your bass while they are trying to sound check the drums. These things are the most finicky, annoying part. Well, I say most finicky and annoying part. They're one of the more fun parts about sound checking a live band, but they are finicky. They're an acoustic instrument. I had to mic up a bunch of acoustic guitars at a recital yesterday, and it was a pain because everybody's using. There's a bunch of kids using 3/4 size guitars that aren't playing loud enough. So I'm like, okay, give me a bit of sound so I can check. Okay, I can't hear you. You need to play it like you're actually playing your guitar. Okay, cool. All right, now play the song, and then they play at half the volume they were during sound check. But they're 8. You're an adult, I'm assuming, if you're watching this, according to my demographics. So you should know better than that, right? Hit your drums, hit them at the volume you're going to be hitting them, and everybody else shut up while they're sound checking them. Listen carefully to your tech. They should be talking to you through the monitor. And when they say, okay, now hit your tom 1, hit tom 2, just listen, follow them, hit them at the volume you're going to be doing. They'll get you to play a beat. They will match it all. In theory, they will put it on the on a bus of some kind, usually like a subgroup, so they can pull you up and down as a whole. Highly recommend doing that if you're a sound tech. Drums in particular are very nice for that. Then when you go to sound check your guitar, make sure your volume knob is, if you run your volume knob at full, make sure it is there and that your amp is set up for it. I usually recommend running the volume knob on your guitar at 80%. And then set your amp up accordingly. And once you have it set, once it is sound checked, do not touch it. I repeat, once you have your amp set up, do not touch it. Make sure, similar to what I was saying with the guitarist or the drummer, that when you hit your distortion pedal or your boost or whatever, that the sound tech knows how much of a spike in volume that is giving you. Don't touch your amp. Have everything set. Have all your pedals and stuff set so that your you can have a slight volume difference between clean and distortion. That's usually the case. But distortion already naturally sounds a bit louder because of the saturation and because of the way we hear distortion. So you don't have to really slam the volume to have distortion have an impact. But make sure you're EQ'd in a way that is going to work with the band, and don't touch it, right? Your sound tech is going to EQ on the mic that they have in front of it, or if you have a DI out or something like that, depending on a lot of modern amplifiers actually sound good when you do that. It didn't used to be the case. Send that out to the front of house and never touch it again. Because as soon as you touch your EQ, the EQ that they did in the front of house to make you fit in with the band doesn't work anymore. As soon as you touch your volume, they have to, like, you turn your amp up on stage, they have to turn your amp down in the mix. You're defeating the purpose of it. If you cannot hear yourself, just tell them you have a microphone in front of you. Hey, I can't hear my guitar. Can we bring it up in the monitor? And they'll say, yeah, sure. And they'll bring it up in the monitor. Don't touch your amp. I can't count how many times I've seen the battle of the amplifiers when you've got two guitarists and this one turns theirs up a little. Oh, I can't hear myself, so they turn themselves up a little. So they turn themselves up, and it just gets louder and louder and louder. And by the end of it, it's just nonsense. Now, if you are in a situation where you do not have all of this, and it's just like I did a recital yesterday that we didn't mic up the amplifier. Again, set it so the sound tech knows what volume you're going to be at, because then they're matching to your amp. You raise your amp's volume, they have to raise everything else, or now you're outdoing everybody. Like, you don't start messing with your volumes. Okay, so guitar players, you're notorious for this. You're notorious for two things: turning your volume up and for playing while they're sound checking the drums. If you avoid those two things, your sound tech is going to think you're the best guitarist they've ever worked with. I guarantee it. Bass players, a lot of the same rules apply. In terms of your gear, you, in my opinion, want a DI out on your amplifier, because then the EQ changes and stuff you've done to your bass here affect the front of house. Oftentimes, if somebody doesn't have a DI out, I'm putting you through I think I've got a J45, putting you through a DI box, and then I'm EQing your bass to match the band sound to the room. If you want more control, you either need a preamp of some kind before you go to your amp that has a DI out. That often can be a really good idea. Or you need an amp that has a DI out on it. If you have neither, something that I have, what was it? It's the Solid Studio. Yeah, NUX. Now I'm a NUX dealer, so take this with a grain of salt. However, I do own one of these personally, and I sold one to a good buddy of mine, and he loves his too. Now, the Solid Studio is not a competitor to something like the my brain. Solid Studio is not a good competitor to something like a Torpedo, right? I can't remember the brand name right now. I do want one of those down the road. But essentially, you can put this between your amplifier and your cabinet, and then it has here we go. It has a bunch of cabinet simulation. Now, these cabs, as you can see, are mostly guitar driven, but there is the Bassman 410 model. So I use that, and then it has different microphones. Just like I was talking about with our good friends, I guess, the DJs. Find the one that you like the sound of the best. And yeah, I would, on top of all of this, it's got the DI out on the side. Never mind. Yeah, you can, you do in and out, and you do the through. I believe the through, my brain, it's been a while since I've used this. The through on this, I believe, just ignores everything. You set this to speaker because you're running it at a speaker level. And now your sound tech is getting the sound of a 410 cabinet mic'd with your microphone of choice. You can bypass this power amp thing here if you don't want to use it. If you want a little bit of extra tube warmth emulation, you can have that on. And now they're getting a signal that sounds like a mic'd up bass amp without micing up a bass amp. I don't know the last time that I even saw a mic'd up bass amp on a stage. Now and this is one thing, if I had the extra channels, it's something that I might do. Some people will do a DI and they will blend in your stage sound a little bit. So they'll throw like an SM58 or something in front of your amp and get a little bit of that sound because it does sound a little more natural. And it really depends on the amp and stuff you're using. But if you have an amp that has a DI out, it's ideal because then the changes that you've made go to the sound tech. As long as you're not playing through like 1970s speakers. I know a lot of people like to say like, oh, they don't make them like they used to. PA systems from the 70s sound better, and they don't. Modern PA systems are better than they've ever been at every price point. It's just the facts. They sound better at louder volumes. They sound clearer. And if your sound tech is good with their EQ, they shouldn't sound harsh even like. The biggest difference between a cheap speaker and a high-end speaker is how harsh they sound when they're at higher volumes. That's the biggest difference. Both of them often can hit as high as like 130 dB on like some of these inexpensive speakers can go that high. They're just not going to sound very good there. So, yeah. My weapon of choice is a QSC HPR 121, 122, whatever the heck their 12-inch was, 122i, something like that. A lot of people use the K series. They're rider friendly for a reason. They work really, really well with live bands. And I've used other speakers, but yeah. I digress. You're going to hear me say that a lot if you haven't caught that already. But yeah, so bass players, like I said, same thing though. Once you have your volume set, don't mess with it. You may have noticed, I mentioned for the guitar player, keeping your volume knob on your guitar at 80%. If you can't hear yourself, bringing your guitar volume up a little bit, not your amp volume, usually is going to help because it will hit the front end of your amp a little more. Turning your guitar amp up 20% isn't going to give you 20% more volume. It's giving you 20% more signal heading into the front of the amp, which will give you a little more distortion and a bump in the mids, which is where you need to hear yourself. So your sound tech's not going to get as annoyed with that as if they are watching you walk back and forth turning your amp up. So that's a little bit of a cheat you can do. And it's something I generally recommend. If you start with your guitar at 80%, then you have somewhere to go. If you're at it full and you need to turn something up for some reason, or even if they ask you to turn things up, you have to walk back to the amp. It's just the only way it works. Singers. Here's how to be nice to your sound tech. Don't just go test. Okay, the mic works. Okay, can I hear this in my monitor? Sing into the darn thing, right? Come up with a little thing that you sing about how now I'm getting sound checked, right? They want to hear you at the volume you're going to be singing at. If you're very expressive, but you're usually stuck in front of the mic, tell them like, hey, do you make sure you got a pretty hefty compressor on there? I tend not to back off as much as I probably should, right? If you explain that ahead of time, they're going to set you up. If you want delay or reverb, feel free to mention it and or request it. Learn the actual terms as well. If you're going to be using a lot of delay and reverb of like, oh, can I get a bit more of the delay in the mix? Like, can you turn the mix up? Or like the volume of because mix usually this is more maybe for a guitar thing. Saying, can I get more delay doesn't make any sense. Can I get longer delay? Can I get more volume on the delay? These narrow things down. More delay. Same thing. Can I get more reverb? It's like, well, do you want me to turn the reverb level up or do you want a longer tail? You could mean either. I have to make that call if you don't clarify. It is perfectly fine to ask for a bit of reverb in your monitors. In fact, especially with things like reverb and delay, I recommend it from a sound tech perspective because it will make your singer happier. Purely dry signal on the monitor often does not sound ideal. Double checking was this? Oh, that's all it was. Okay. Confirmations on times and meetings. Huzzah! Oh, email? Does this matter? I'm already looking at my phone. I may as well check. It doesn't. It's just an ad from Waves. Someday I might buy stuff from them again, especially now that it actually works in my DAW. Who knew? Anyway, So we've got our singer. Like I said, it's perfectly fine to ask for different things. If you're going to be walking around on stage with the microphone, tell the sound tech, like, hey, I walk around. Is that all good? And then you'll want to walk around while you're sound checking to make sure you don't feedback in front of any of the monitors and stuff. Make sure you never, ever point the microphone towards the monitors. I have seen that happen. Do I have a spare mic nearby? I don't. All right, phone it is. So they're singing, and they get a bit of feedback. Like, why is it feeding back? I don't understand. And I'm just like, okay, I can't actually fix it because now you have it aimed back. Don't choke the microphone. Okay. This is gonna ASMR a little bit. Boop, 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 boop. This back section of the basket. Where is my This back section here is important. Let me unscrew this. I have to be really careful now because you will hear some annoying noises here, and so this is the diaphragm in here. I'm backing away because my plosives don't have the foam inside here to stop it. This basically, if you didn't know how microphones work, this is a dynamic microphone. So there's like a magnet and a moving coil. Like it's kind of like a reverse of a speaker, right? On a speaker, you have your diaphragm that is the cone that's moved back and forth, and it's being moved by a voice coil and a magnet reacting to the electricity being pumped into it. This is the opposite. You hit the diaphragm, it moves, and the interaction between the magnet and the coil make electricity. That's the quick explanation. I'm sure at some point I misspoke on something there, and somebody will correct me in the comments because that's the internet. But the sound, the air hits it and then comes out. It has to go somewhere, right? So if you choke your microphone, if you cup the mic, I know some screamer singers, some rappers and stuff, they like this look of wrapping the hand around the basket. I don't know why. And I actually don't know the physics behind this. I should know it because I enjoy this kind of stuff. But oftentimes, cupping the mic like that, because of the way the air is supposed to enter and exit on the designs of these microphones, it will turn them into an omnidirectional mic. That means they don't just pick up from the front or slightly from the sides, which is how they normally work, where it's kind of like a bit of a mushroom thing, where it's front and side, front louder, sides quieter, back rejection. Now you've got an omnidirectional mic and it picks up behind it, which means those monitors are now giving you feedback. Problem. So be nice to your sound tech as a singer and don't cup your microphone. Hold it by the handle. You can get as close to that as you want. You can go as far back from that as you want. If your hand is touching the windscreen, you're doing something wrong. That's my good rule of thumb. I've heard people say, I sound better when I do that. I don't care. I can EQ you to sound better. I cannot EQ a omnidirectional microphone to not feedback. There might be a way. I'm not dealing with that if I don't have to. Okay, time for some noises. I could mute it, but I didn't. Hey, there we go. This thing has a pretty good pop filter on its own, but I like this. I think it sounds better, so I do my foamy. Anyway, so yeah, that's the big thing with singers is if you're gonna walk around with your mic, walk around with your mic, to make sure there's no feedback. And if you're going to hold it from the handheld part. If you're touching the windscreen, problems. Like I said, perfectly fine to ask for reverb, delay. If you're going to request delay, if you're going to ask for changes on it, then mention it. If you don't like delay, also mention that to the sound tech. I mean, everybody likes reverb, at least a little bit of it. Especially my general rule of thumb on reverb is I make sure that it's there, but you only notice it if it's gone. That's my starting point. We want a little bit so that it just sounds less dry. But if you like more of an effect, then tell them. If you don't like delay, if you don't like echo, just tell them, hey, no delay or anything. I don't really like that. Then they just don't do it, and they're fine with that. There's no sound tech in the world that's gonna be like, well, no, I put delay on my singers, so suck it up, right? Yeah, so that's how to be nice to your sound tech as a singer. The rest of you, when it comes to your monitors, be just explicit what you want in there, right? Oh, I can't. Can I get a little bit of kick drum in my monitor? Cool. I want to be able to hear myself a bit better. Oh, I can't hear myself in my monitor. Okay, right. Tell us that. If you're 3 feet away from your microphone and you're telling the sound tech though that, hey, I can't hear myself, they're fully within their rights to move you forward. Be aware, if you go too close to your microphone, you get the proximity effect, which sometimes can sound good. It does overemphasize your bass frequencies, and it does highly increase the volume of your voice. And it also means that the further microphone technique is an important thing to learn as a singer. If you are used to having your microphone the exact same distance away all the time, not a big deal. Then the sound tech can adjust it. But the closer your microphone is to you, yes, you are louder. Yes, you get that proximity effect, which, depending on your voice and the style of music, might sound good, might not. So careful. But if you put your microphone right up to your mouth and then you move a few inches away, it is a bigger deal than if I have my microphone here and I have my microphone here. Not a big deal. If I have my microphone here and then I have my microphone here, much more drastic of a change. So during sound check, check these things. Have your microphone where you are intending to have it. I like my microphone either right against my lips if I'm singing in a rock band. Like I've gotten a shock or two from badly ground stages because of that. But if I'm singing in like an acoustic group, I actually have my microphone quite a ways further away because I'm more dynamic when I'm singing with my acoustic guitar, because I like to bring up and down my volume a lot more. And then I actually play with the mic. I move my distances. Your mileage may vary. And this goes for everybody. If you're background singers and stuff, when you sound check at the distance that you intend to be. Because if you're like, hey, check, and then you're singing back here, then they have to go and adjust it. And then you go to talk after and you're like right up here. But right, you have to learn your distances from your microphone. But yeah, so long story long, let's go through one by one and summarize this all. Drummers, hit your drums. And everybody else shut up while the drummer's doing what they need to do. Okay? This is a perfect time to tune, not a time to set your tone. Guitar players, make sure that your amp is at the level that you're going to be leaving it at. Don't touch your amp. You can get away with a little bit of leeway. I would say set your volume knob at 80%, so you have a little bit of leeway on your guitar itself. Because if they see you walking back and forth to that amp, they're going to hate you. Same thing with your EQ. Like I said, the only thing, a little bit of adjustment on your guitar, right? Pulling your tone knob down if it sounds a little harsh, pushing your volume up on your guitar if it's a little quiet. If you can't hear yourself, ask. They can bring you up the monitor. Don't start competing back and forth. Bass players, DI outs are your best friend. You will sound the best that way. Live miking a bass amp is a crapshoot. It just never sounds as good as people want it to. DI is the way to go. But then you need to make sure that your amp has a DI out if you want any of your EQ settings and stuff to translate into the front of house. That's why like a DI or a preamp with a DI equipped in it can be really nice, because then the adjustments you do right here at the floor do affect it. But be aware, anything you do now that affects the front of house, you have to be careful of. Same thing with the guitar. If you like having an amp behind you for stage volume, set it and forget it. If you need more volume, ask the sound tech. Singers, don't cup your microphone. It's terrible. Every defense I've heard of it is horrendous. It's just something you should not do. Sound check, similar to your drummer, at the volume you're going to be performing at, right? I don't care that it's weird that you're singing into a microphone and there's nobody else playing. And again, everybody shut up. They're sound checking the vocalist. In a lot of bar situations, just so everyone is aware, they're often going to sound check backwards. Normally, everybody says you sound check the drummer first. That is just usually how I do it because it is, again, the most finicky. There's so many things going on. Oftentimes, I just have four mics on the drum kit. I've got stereo overheads, snare, kick. But if I'm dealing with 7 or 8 mics on the drum kit, you're damn right I'm doing it first because there's just so much stuff. If I'm at a bar, though, I'm probably going to sound check the vocalist first to get a baseline of here's the volume that the vocalist is going to be singing at. And I have it brought up to the volume for the front of house. So this is how loud they're going to be. And then I bring everything up to match it. That's bar sound 101. It's much smaller stages than what these guys are dealing with. And then when it comes to your monitor mixes, be explicit. If you want something in there, just ask. Again, I can't hear myself. Get them to bring it up. Hey, I want kick drum. Ask for it. Hey, can I get my voice with reverb on it? Cool. Oh, I don't like delay. Make sure it's not on there. Cool. Yeah. That's what it means to be nice to your sound tech. Make it so that they can make you sound as good as possible. That is their job. If you start screwing around with your volumes and stuff because you think it's going to sound better, they're going to hate you for it. If you start playing while other people are sound checking their instruments, they're going to hate you for it. Right? They're still going to do their job, but they're going to be grumpy while they do it. If you make their life nice and easy, they will likely do a better job because you've made their life easier. Not only are they going to be happier while they're working with you and then want to work with you again, which is always nice, especially from, again, like a venue perspective. If they have a house sound tech and the house sound tech hates you, they're going to voice that to management. So you being like a standout of, man, they were so good to work with. They were really professional. They hear that from, their grumpy sound tech who's been there for 30 years. You're in. You're coming back. Yeah, it's just a case of the easier you are to work with as well, right? If you follow all these steps, they're going to have an easier and better time to make you sound better. Because if I'm a sound tech and I'm just constantly juggling back and forth trying to make sure that the guitars aren't getting out of hand in terms of volume, if I don't have to worry about that, your vocalist is going to sound better because I'm going to have more time to like sculpt an EQ for them or make sure the reverb is exactly where I like it and stuff like that. Then if I have to keep on making sure stuff's working, if they keep cupping the mic and then I have to keep pulling the volume down because it's feedbacking like crazy because it's gone omnidirectional, like if you make it easier on the sound tech, if you make their life easier, they will make you sound better. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, soundgirls.org, for this stage plot. There is this how to make a stage plot. They have it on here. Interesting. I'm unfamiliar with this website. It just came up with this. I'm like, why does this sound tech website have a section on sexual harassment? Oh. Yeah. Women in this industry are it's a better situation than it used to be, but it is definitely not perfect. So I kind of get this now. And especially, this is not an excuse for the actions, but it is just part of the situation. A lot of times, if you're a sound tech and you're a woman, you're in a bar with a bunch of people drinking, including the bands. And alcohol, again, is not an excuse for being a complete dick. But if somebody is a little bit of a dick and they get a few drinks in them, they become a much bigger dick. So, yeah, that actually makes sense that they have. Unfortunately, it makes sense that on a website for women in audio that they have to have a section on sexual harassment. Oh, that depresses me. Oh, that's on here. Thankfully, I didn't click over to it. All right. Carrying on to other things because I feel like it. I kind of want one of these now. This isn't listed in the description, but I just want to do a bit of an aside. Yeah, Daryl Bennett, DJ Daryl Bennett, I think it was. I was on his podcast a bit ago talking about audio. He did a review on this. I normally go and recommend the Dragon X 4 bar, and it's pretty good. Where is he? The Dragon X 4 bar. I did a review on this thing. This is my go-to for smaller gigs because it's one power cable, comes with a stand. The version I have is like this one where it has the two pedals. Thankfully now, includes battery. That's a bad way to phrase that. What they're meaning here is it is at the end of it. Okay. In 2023, they added a wireless 4-mode pedal. The original pedal just had auto and blackout. Not good. The blackout was handy because you could just click, turn it off. But having music, auto is nearly useless on these, in my opinion. But music color blackout, I may end up with 2 or 3 more of these as I expand out more multi-op-ish. Because being able to have these, both from a rental perspective, renting out a light show for like, yeah, these things only cost $300, but you can like rent these out for $50, $100. And nobody's gonna bat an eye. And this is Canadian pricing, so in the US this is even cheaper. But yeah, if somebody's doing like a DIY DJ thing, these have a knob on the back. I don't know if any of these. Hey, that has the proper photo. I was about to point with my finger and then realized this doesn't help you at all. This little doohickey here, I don't know why I said that. This little guy here is a volume knob for the internal microphone. So you set that to a volume that your speakers are not setting this thing off always, but like when the actual snare or kick drum hits are happening. And then being able to black it out and then switch it to music mode with the foot pedal is actually wonderful. And then color, being able to click that on for things like first dances, right? Sometimes if I'm a DJ in a wedding, blackout. That's what I want. If I'm doing a more upbeat dance, I'm going to like for the rest of the night basically I would leave it on music. I DMX my stuff, but if you're only using a single light fixture, having it on auto modes controlled by the music can actually work pretty well. It's when you've got like 5 lights and they're all doing their own thing that sound active modes are terrible. And then being able to switch the color. So like, okay, it's their first dance and you guys want like a bit of a purple. Click, 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 click. Hey, there we go. Ready to go. And then you can switch to this. Yeah, this is awesome. And then for doing live sound with bands, this would be really nice as well. Because the software I'm using right now isn't really well equipped for bands, unfortunately. But I digress. The reason I mentioned this light, I forgot that I had it on my search bar, is it is very similar, but it is battery powered. It doesn't use the foot switch for control. That I think the Dragon X has it beat. But this does have these strobes up top, and it does some cool effects bouncing between both of them. And this has wireless DMX equipped on it. So for my system, this would actually be sweet. And especially because sometimes they end up putting you a little bit ways from the dance floor, so being able to take this thing and setting it like right next to the dance floor, but it's not like behind you, and not having to run any cables or anything to it. You just put a wireless transmitter in your rig and then send it over. Yeah, this is actually really, really cool. And yeah, again, it says right there, CAD. So in the States, these are even cheaper. I'd probably still go and suck it up and just deal with the single power cable for something like this. But yeah, that was a thing. And then the other thing I've been looking at. I just got one of these. These little mixers are actually really sweet. Is there any way to open this without it doing this weird zoomy thing so I could point this up? Maybe not. That's better. I just want to be able to like point to stuff, and this is letting me highlighting things. So we got 2 channels. It does do phantom power, which is really nice. We've got technically it's a 4 channel, right? It even says here 2 mic / line, 2 mono / 1 stereo, right? If you're ever looking into mixers, that's usually how it's broken up. It doesn't have compressors. That's the one thing on it that I'm like, I kind of wish it had those. But for speaking events, I'm less worried because I have to ride the mics a little bit more anyway because everybody speaks at different volumes because humans. Yeah, so it doesn't have any monitor outs or anything like that. So it is a pretty limited little guy. However, as you can see, oh, that's weird. Now it's not letting me zoom in at all. Refresh. Yeah. So we got our 2 microphone inputs. I love that they were dirty for this photo. That just makes me happy. We've got our 2 inputs, our main outs, and then headphone out. It is a little annoying having just 1/4 inch for main outputs, but in this form factor, like this thing is tiny. I can live with that. This saves so much space. For bigger form factors ones, I don't think they have an excuse. Now, there is this USB port here I will probably never use, but for wedding DJs and stuff, it can be nice to have a... I'm going to have my first dances and ceremony music and stuff on a USB stick so that I can have a like 3rd level of backup. Like redundancy is just nice to have. So there is that. I probably will never use it. But you'll notice here, line and USB. This is a 2-channel, 2 in, 2 out is what I should say, recording interface because it'll do stereo out and then can do stereo in for recording. It uses USB-C and it's powered via USB-C, which is really nice. So much like the interface I have here. And this really annoys me that we don't have balanced outputs. Like this mixer here, starting at $70. Why? In the name of everything that is holy and held dear. Why do $500 DJ boards not have balanced outputs? If a $70 mixer, like I've heard, it takes more than just some like wiring in this port, right? Wire this thing in, right? This thing has a DAC that is fed straight to the main outputs and is $70. The real reason DJ boards under $500 don't have outputs is cost saving. It would cut into their profits a bit, I'm assuming. On top of that, it part of me in my head was thinking like, oh, maybe they want to sell more mixer boards, but most of the companies that make these don't, right? This is why it annoys me that they aren't balanced but the Hercules Impulse 500 has 1/4 inch outs, which is nice because then you don't have to run any adapters. You can just use like guitar cables. You wouldn't want to use long runs because it's unbalanced, right? Balanced gets less noise for those longer runs. And then, but yeah, everything else in that kind of price point, like the Newmarks, I think pretty much everything, like the Pioneer stuff, they all have just RCAs. Now, I have a slight suspicion it's because the people buying those level of unit aren't doing weddings and stuff where it actually matters, right? If you show up to a club and you're a beginner DJ and stuff, they probably have a board that can take RCAs. They're just at this point expecting it. Yeah. But anyway, it just really annoys me that, CAD here, they're making a $70 mixer that has balanced outputs and $500 DJ controllers don't. I just don't understand it. Anyway, so this line USB button here turns this knob here into a volume control for audio coming out of the computer, which is really nice. This might turn into my, I need to do some testing battery life wise with my my computer, but for ceremonies as a DJ, I plug my microphones in here and here. I plug this into a laptop via USB that then powers the whole thing. And then my audio from the computer is going into this knob here. And then in something like Virtual DJ or whatever DJ software of choice you use, you set your main output to this. And I believe you can set your headphone output to the computer's headphone jack. That is essentially where I am aiming. The only problem I have right now is my computers are all on the older side, so the battery life is a little meh. I have a tablet that has really good battery life, so I might see, given that a lot of USB-C audio interfaces have gotten a little more robust in terms, or the USB-C drivers. Like I think I don't know if the tablet output can power something like this. I think it would only work as a connection. I'll have to see. But I think actually I would be curious what the compatibility is with something like an iPad. Because if you could run an iPad into this running DJ, great software, and then have your two mics plugged into this, like the iPad has really good battery life, so I wouldn't be as worried. Like I'm honestly often worried about my laptop just dying if I have it unplugged for more than 5 minutes, because that's just the state of used laptops that I gravitate towards. One of these days I may buy something that's a little more of like a thin and light that has good battery, and then just dedicate it to nothing but ceremony work. We'll see. But yeah, that's just something that I do find neat about these, is that they are purely USB-C powered, and can run off of the computer itself. So similar to my USB interface that's sitting on my desk here. And yeah, not having to bring my controller. And I do have a power. I'll have to test. I do have a way to battery power my laptop, because I've got a. For those curious, Moto Master Eliminator 700. Oh, they've changed the. I don't want the 700. Hey, mine does 700 watts. because I'm thinking watts and it's listing them in. So I've got one of these guys. These do not hold up against the Jackery stuff by any means, because the Jackery has its own inverter that is better than these. So this has, well, let me zoom in, a 700 watt power inverter. I use these when I am doing, there's a local parade that I do in August that I plug a small PA system into this thing and we make a bunch of noise in the back of a car. It's a good time. But for ceremony, I don't actually need 700 watts. The inverter on here is a modified sine wave. So a proper sine wave similar to what I was showing with those clipping things. A pure sine wave, it looks like a sound wave. Like it's just a nice up and down. These are a lot blockier. The power is still there, but it creates a lot of noise, is the best way I can describe it. There's other stuff going on. But I have an inverter, 500 watt, that I can plug into the side of it. That is a pure sine wave. So this, a small speaker, and then I can plug my computer in. That might be the answer for ceremony work. Yeah. That might do it. I'm going to test that theory a little bit. I'm going to see, because the problem I've had is like when I plug stuff into this inverter, I get noise. I'm going to see if my speaker can handle it. I have one amplifier that if I plug it into these, it just won't work. It does not like a modified sine wave. But I've tested it. I've gotten 3 or 4 hours out of a charge running pretty loud. So an hour ceremony where I'm only playing like 3 or 4 songs isn't a big deal. But a Jackery might be a thing in my future. Yeah. Anyway, that's my new mixer. Speaking of new things, though, something I'm considering, because I do have one of these, and I do like the sound of it. I am testing some theories in terms of my best options to get a live sound without bringing an amp. So I'm also considering one of these, because it just seems a lot simpler than bringing my pedal board and rigging it up. It seems lighter. It probably will sound better in the end than doing all my pedals into a power amp simulator, then into a IR box, and then into the main board. Because I want to eventually switch to in-ear monitors. They're just easier across the board, right? We looked at that stage plot before that had 7 monitors. Dear God, no. If I don't have to haul 7 speakers with me, I'm not gonna. Now, this is the NUX MG30. I did a review of the 300. It's a Chinese thing, or maybe a Korean thing, where lower numbers is the better ones. I don't know. In North America, usually higher number is better. But the 300 is their entry level one, and then I think they have a few others. What are they? Effects, multi effects. Are these all affairs? Yeah, they added the 4. This is really weird. I'll never understand this. So, they have the 101. And then they added the 300, so the higher number was better. The 400, also better, but then the 30 is the... Yeah. These are cool, I will say. Now, something I do like on these is smaller form factor, but still lots of buttons. I can't remember. Is this like the foot turn knob, or is it a button, or is it both? Are they going to tell me? Yeah, it's using the same thing as the MG300, but oh yeah, that looks like a, well, that's a switch, but is that a... Are they going to tell me anywhere, or do I have to go into the manual? Color display, scenes, looper, QuickTone, USB interface. Yeah, I don't know what that button does. Because it has like that plastic knob thing on it. I've seen that on some amps and stuff where you can turn it with your foot. But it looks like what they've done is they've got control one and two, and then these move you up and down, which I like that interface of I'm gonna switch back and forth between things, but then I've got these two buttons to switch between things. Because the 300 comes with a secondary pedal, so it's a little bit annoying, but at the same time, I'm fairly certain it comes with it. Unless that was a limited time offer that I've long missed. There it is. The little AB switch that they skip past there. So yeah, they got outputs. You can do mono or stereo, which is nice. But for live, I always use mono. And I mean that from a front of house perspective. I do mild pans for the drums, so having this stuff would be fine. But I believe firmware updates. Oh, interesting. They've ran into some problems there. Manual. I believe it comes with the extra foot switch. I believe this is included, which is nice because basically what then you turn this into is this becomes your amp sim, and then I think you can set, depending on which sim you're running, or which not sim, but like what preset, be it user or factory, which do user, they plan those with a different guitar. They're usually over the top, etc. I hear they're better than some, but go in, edit to your heart's content, save it. I believe then you can set these two buttons on this pedal to be stomp boxes. So if you need more buttons and switches than that, might not be the one for you, but just as an example, you can set it, I believe, to have this foot switch be one, and then each of these foot switches to be other stuff. And if you wanted to run, say, this is always my boost button, and then one of these is delay and the other is reverb or something like that, or like effects, you don't want to assign effects that you're going to leave on, right? Like if you're running a compressor pedal that you're going to leave on 100% of the time, why would you set it to one of these? But if you bring on something for an effect, and a compressor can be used for that, then you would assign it to these. But yeah, I believe you can adjust it. The only thing I don't like about this modeler is it is designed to have it has two processors in it. I think what they basically did is they have one that's dedicated to the amp and then one that's dedicated to all the effects and stuff, so that they can make sure. It's funny that they added in Snake to it. The only thing I don't like about it is you can't run two amps at the same time. At this price point, the more I've looked into it, the less I think that matters. Because it is like its competition at this price point, I don't think can either. But they were boasting that it has two processors in it, like doubling its processing power. And I think in this case, they're using that simply for faster processing. Five-way directional encoder. Operation. Knob 1, 2, 3, 4. Foot switches. So yeah, I've only used the entry-level version of these. So I'm actually curious. I am a NUX dealer, so take any decisions I make with a grain of salt, because I, one, get them at cost. That's kind of how it works. And two, I sell them. So, I have my biases. But you can assign the control foot to be tap, compressor, gate, effects, EQ. I don't know what they mean by SR. Maybe studio reverb. Because yeah, they have. That's interesting. So they have a bunch. I see what they're getting at. Let me zoom in. PDFs that you can do this in. So in your chain, I'm not 100% sure what the SR. Maybe that's signal routing. So that might be a effects loop. You can assign that button to control a bunch of these different things. So if you have a compressor in here, you can have this button control that. If you have an effect, right? So whatever effect pedal, like things like phaser and stuff that you would put beforehand, your gate. I don't know why you would turn. Well, I guess there are certain situations, especially for like more genty stuff and things like that, that I've seen people use gate as an effect. I don't, but I could see it being used that way. But yeah, so you can assign all of those, and then yeah, you can turn it into a tap tempo, which is also nice. Oh, interesting. For quick scene, you can engage / disengage signal blocks freely, and it can keep delay / reverb tails while you disengage them from the. This is one of the reasons why I love the sound of an analog reverb. I'm moving more and more to digital. I love the idea of being able to turn off my delay pedal and have it finish what it's doing while I start playing something else. That to me can often be worth it. So that's kind of cool that it's that assignable. But now let me zoom back out so I see what that's doing now. Does it mention the external foot switch? Operation, knobs. There's the built-in foot switches. Aux in, useless to me. I guess, no, the aux in has its uses. I could see using an aux in like that for, I could see using the aux in for, practice. I wouldn't use it for like backing. Well, solo artist, maybe. EXP1 used for an additional NMP-2. What do you mean additional? Is there a spot specifically for it? Normally? Oh, I think additional is a they're not misspeaking necessarily, but it's like a translation thing. They mean because you can add that. But I thought it came with one. We'll actually have to check. Global settings. output, factory defaults, global setting, info, and then into Mandarin. NMP. Oops, not me. NMP. Very annoying. This is all an image. Nuex, if you ever watch this, please, 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 make your manuals searchable. Da, 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 da. So, talking about drums and stuff. Loop foot switches. How to turn on the outputs. That's handy, but I want calibrate the expression pedal. So I'm gonna assume I'm gonna assume that similar to the control button, you can assign these, and they are assigned to, like it said, tap tempo or other stuff. I don't like this manual. However, I think part of the problem here is I think part of the problem here is that this manual was written before they started adding some of the extra features, because they have made some changes. Yeah, it comes with the NMP Lite external foot controller. Because yeah, so why am I looking at this? Two reasons. One is I was really impressed with the MG300. I will say that out the gate. Again, I do sell these. However, I'm not an internet dealer, so me saying, "Hey, these things are good," and then a bunch of people in like the UK or something seeing that and then buying one, doesn't affect me. So it was my own opinion of the product. So there's that, right? Like I don't much care about other people's kind of thoughts on my level of bias, because it doesn't affect me if you buy this thing or not. It affects me if I buy it. Want to offer stomp mode, 3 signal blocks as stomp application. Parallel routing. Okay, cool. Yeah, like it's just a case of it looks like you can assign like almost any of these to the buttons, but it's just not describing that very well. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about how these sound. A lot of people have said like there are some limitations in programming compared to stuff that's twice the price. But that stuff is like twice the price. I was using Red One earlier. Let's consult. Effects and pedals. Let's consult Red One here. I usually use Lon McQuaid, but type. Looking for guitar. Oh, just effects processors. Okay. So we got the Boss one that's almost twice as expensive, but I've heard good things about. Zoom, this one is cheaper. Headrush, this one's not all that much more. Boss GT1. Hotone still exists? Interesting. I thought they might be dead. I just haven't seen anything. Well, you know, they probably changed distributors. I used to be able to get their stuff. I don't think I can anymore. I think so. They probably just changed distributors. That's all. Got the Moore one. So here's what I'm looking for. This is something that can change my mind as to which modeler I go with. I've heard really good things about, speaking of NUX, this being like an analog multi-effect, which I think is something Boss used to do. I don't know if they still do or not. This is quite a bit more expensive, but I'll check it out too because I can get those. What the heck is this? I don't know this one. And it is a NUX, so I can get it. Because yeah, I'm also a Moore dealer. I don't know if I can get Headrush in or not. I'm just curious. What I'm searching for is if there is one that I can get dual amp, like a wet dry output. I know you can out of the higher end line 6 stuff, which intrigues me. Very much intrigues me. Key features at a glance. Doesn't look like it. This is a Moore one at about 460 Canadian, so it's roughly the same price as the other. They're kind of coming out swinging. Don't believe so. This probably, I would assume at this. Ooh, XLR outputs. Interesting. I'm going to have to check my pricing on these. Because here's what I want. My ideal is being able to send the sound tech the sound of 2 guitar cabinets, either blended together and I set the balance, or send them to as if I have 2 amps on stage and one has effects, one doesn't. That to me is ideal. Now they do have although so that's interesting as well, the guitar impulse responses. The bass cabinet stuff too. That's the other reason I'm considering something like this is as I start playing a bit more bass, I like the idea of having this thing play double duty and just use it as a bass preamp. As I was talking about when I was talking about being nice to your sound guy. But they had something about like the parallel processing and stuff and being able to switch things on and off. That was interesting to me. Yeah, see, or I think they're just having it before, after each other. So you can kind of select where things happen. Which kind of makes sense. So this is like reverb delay ahead of time before it, like, so basically if you had, say, your pedals going into your amp, this would be more post in the, so this is more I don't like that. I'm assuming this might be an oversimplification of how it can work. Again, Nuax, if you're watching this, I don't know what this SR means. I still haven't. I'll track that down later. I want to be able to put these in the effects loop, essentially, of the amp so that it's before the IR. I think that's doable in the software. Because the software for this actually is one of the reasons why I'm intrigued by this. I like a mouse and keyboard. This tells me that is probably the case, that I can adjust that, because you can see it's ordered here. And I believe you can edit those orders. Can have the control activate wah. That's actually nice. I got rid of my wah pedal. I'm gonna miss it at some point, I'm sure. But it was picking up a lot of dust. One second. This could be a client. Well, bam. What was I getting at? Yeah, being able to have that on and off. I had to get rid of my wah. I just wasn't using it enough, and it wasn't fitting my pedal board. I'm still probably going to keep my pedal board because I like my pedal collection, but yeah, as I was saying, my ideal would be a amp sim that can I can do parallel processing, right? One amp running my delays and stuff, and the other amp just being pure yeah. Volume block, min, max, setting, and flexible order within patch. Control pregains while your ambient effect. Okay, this is cool. I've seen stuff like this where you can swell, like if you have an ambient delay you can swell it and things like that using the, because again I don't use wah a lot. I'm more of a rhythm guitarist. Uh XP1 control. I see. So they have this set up that a interesting. Okay. Yeah, like I said, like this is more intricate than the manual. That's why I'm thinking the manual was printed after. uh like they printed the manual post Now, as I mentioned, one of the reasons I'm looking at this stuff, I'm getting a little bit all over the place here because I'm tired and drinking coffee. Is I want an easier setup, and I'm thinking about moving to in-ear monitors. And if I go in-ear monitors, being able to show up to a gig and plug straight in is ideal. Um, I'm usually doing that essentially anyway with that Solid Studio because again, this works wonders live. But I have found ground issues can pop up trying to use this thing in a live situation if the power's not perfectly clean. I get a lot less noise using stuff like this. Now, as the title states, amp modelers are sounding better and better, and I want to kind of get into why. And largely, it is because of these impulse responses are. I mean, this isn't new. They kind of it's one of those things you can watch. I think it was Spectre Sound Studios. That guy there, he used to be heavily against using modelers and things because they did not sound as good as a mic'd cabinet because that moving air, just the energy in the room, like you can't capture that as well because a lot of old cabinet simulators were just a model of the cabinet and they sounded okay, but it's just they never were quite as good as plug into the real thing, which is why a lot of people would take something like the MG30 and you route it through your amplifiers. They have a block diagram of that because they have output modes that will allow for that. So you can send the thing to the front end of your amplifier or into your ideally your amplifier's effects return on the effects loop. Bypass the preamp, use this thing as your preamp, but then the power amp will round out the digital edges, and then the speaker itself will make it sound like who knew there's a speaker moving. Nowadays, these more modern processors, they all have impulse responses. I have a strong suspicion. Yeah, this has an IR loader. The original version, I think it was the Cerberus, didn't have the IR stuff. It was more of a plug it into your amp. This is, from what I can tell, a little more of a let's have everything in one box. That's a little more analog-y in terms of how you set it up. Like, I have a strong suspicion a lot of these knobs are the way the knobs are set is the way it's going to sound, which I kind of like. I'm if I get something like the MG, I'm gonna program it. I'm gonna program the crap out of it. The way I often like to describe this stuff, if you're trying to decide between, do I go a traditional amp with pedal setup or do I pick up something like this guy and program it? If you're the kind of person who just wants to flip the on switch and have it sound like my amp, I've got a trainer 40 watt with a I updated the speaker at one point because it had a not so great speaker in it. My amp I can make sound good in about 4 seconds. Right after it's been on for a bit because it's a tube amp and needs to warm up. I hit the on button or hit the standby button and adjust my EQ to match my mood and the guitar I'm playing, and it's just going to sound good every time. I know. My pedal board is set up exactly the way I want it. I don't touch any of the knobs anymore. It's just exactly where I want it. If you're that kind of person, these things are not for you. Like they kind of can be because it is nice no matter what room you walk into, you plug the thing into the PA and it just sounds the same every time. But do you want to program? Do you want to go in and I want to go in and adjust everything? Do I want to sit there for like a few hours and fiddle with every setting, but then it's there, right? These are like the two sides of the same coin, really. Do I want a amp I can switch on, and because I know my amp really well, I can set it up really, really fast for the sound I want? Or do I want a a modeler that is set up that it just sounds good every time because I have spent the time programming it? They're both good options. The only reason I may not get something like this, I have a amp sim pedal that I'm going to see how my pedal board sounds through it. Because then if I can keep my pedal board and not have to buy anything, I might do it. At the same time, oh man, this just looks so much easier. This just looks so much easier. I don't know how often I would use the drums, but at the same time, for teaching, that's the other thing. I wish these would have dual inputs. I have seen that on a few. Like my wife has a. I might just bring it to work. I don't think she's ever gonna use it. My wife has a amp that it's got a lot of dust on it. She doesn't use it very often, but it sounds really good. And you can plug two guitars into it because it was designed with guitar teachers in mind. I might start using that because it's a good sounding amp. It's like a Fender one. G-Deck has like built-in drums and stuff like that. And for teaching, having built-in drums can be very nice. Yeah, I might exploit that a bit more if I have something like this at my disposal. Um, I wonder an ABY switch if it would allow for two guitars plugged into the front, or that'd probably overload the input. Two guitars into the same input never works out the way you kind of want, so you kind of need separate. Um, but yeah, being able to have like, yeah, if you're digging ambient stuff, especially, man, stuff like this can be ideal. But anyway, that is like you said, I'm intended to talk more about the difference between IRs and cabinet sims of the past. But it's honestly pretty simple. There is an article I had up that I was gonna go over, kind of what the differences are. But honestly, the main difference that I'm aware of is a cabinet sim is mostly just an EQ with maybe a little bit of a like an aural exciter kind of thing, that adds a bit of distortion in certain frequencies and stuff like that. Where an impulse response is like they send a whole bunch of different frequencies at different volume through the speaker and figure out how it responds to all of the different stuff, and then use processing power to make sure that when you're sending a signal into it, it is responding in that way. And they sound so unbelievably better, so much better than stuff we've dealt with in the past. So I'm probably going this route. But like I said, I'm going to be testing some stuff. I do have some guitar reviews coming up in the near future. I might start bringing some of my guitars home and doing like live live guitar reviews on these Mondays of different guitars from the store. I don't know yet. Cause yeah, I'm starting to run out of things to talk about when it comes to DJ and live sound stuff outside of microphone reviews, and I don't know if I really have it in me to do a crap ton of microphone reviews. So I might start pivoting a little more to guitar. I also want to do a series on how to teach guitar that I don't think will be too locked in with a lot of my recent content, but we'll see. I don't really care. I'm a small enough creator at this point that I can do whatever the heck I want and just see what works. But speaking of seeing what works, I've got some students coming up, so I'm gonna get going, have some more food before going, and likely sitting there because I have a lot of students who aren't gonna be here today because it's first week off of school. So a bunch of parents paid for this week, lesson-wise, and then we just don't know if their kids are going to be here or not because the kids don't think there's a lesson. The parents do. I'm going to be there. We'll see. Anyway, I appreciate anybody who stuck out me rambling this much because I intended to have. I mean, the first half of this stream was a lot more focused, so there's that. But then kind of reduced down to me looking at a manual for a while and figuring out if this suits my needs. And it might. I've got somebody coming in to buy something today, so one of these might be in my near future. We'll see. But hopefully be back next week. I say hopefully, not because I don't plan to be, but because I think next week I'm going to kind of bridge some of these gaps I've got. I have a video in mind that I'm going to be doing anyway. I want to get into the difference between, or not difference, why everybody should have virtual DJ on their computer. And I don't mean DJs. I mean guitar players, teachers, musicians in general, because what that software can do all in one box is actually pretty impressive. I just have to make sure I've got the right set of non-copyright music, because to demo it, I need that. So anyway, I appreciate people stopping by, and yeah, hopefully some videos coming out this week. We will see. My life has calmed down, so I'm hoping to record a bunch of stuff. I might record some tonight because I've got time. Like I said, a bunch of students aren't coming in, but we'll see. We'll see how much energy I have after this pot of coffee I just drank. Talk to you later.